This is Russ Vaughan for theforestblog.com. I'd like to talk a little bit about the lumber trade dispute that's been going on between the U.S. and Canada. Recently it was released that 20% duty was going to be placed on Canadian softwood imports coming into the U.S. And a lot of people are writing and talking about it, and for good reasons. It's a big issue. Canada and the U.S. are very reliant on one another as trade partners. And certainly the building industry in the United States depends on having more than just the United States domestic production going into construction markets. So you can see why different groups like the National Association of Home Builders and others have chimed in on the issue. Unfortunately, somewhere along the lines, the facts got misrepresented. Lumber is a very important part of building. However, it's not as big a cost as people would think. We build homes from wood, but that doesn't mean that wood is the highest cost. Over the years, sawmill production has increased dramatically per mill, so the cost of lumber has actually stayed pretty flat over the last 2 decades. We're seeing prices now that have crept up into the mid 400s, but that's nothing new. We had prices in 2004 and 5 that were in excess of $400 a thousand for the entire year as an average. Right now we're at about $435 a thousand, which is a high number and higher than a lot of people are used to. We had a really down housing market since the global financial crisis and the real estate bubble that burst in 2008 and 2009. Housing starts went from averaging around 1.5 million housing starts, single family housing starts a year, to around 1 million and even under 1 million for a while, and they've been hovering around 1.1, 1.2 for the last few years. So we're now seeing a little increase in building. The economy's picked up a little bit, and so the lumber market's picked up again. It's supply and demand. Well, we had an expiration on the Softwood lumber agreement that was completed in October 2015. Which was 10 years of a agreement between the U.S. and Canada that had duties that were ratcheted based on price, and I think there were some quotas in certain provinces of Canada with lumber coming into the U.S. But these duties and different things are nothing new, and I think now what we're seeing are people that either don't think we should have duties or didn't realize that we didn't have them, or just used to the last year and a half or 2 years of no duties, which we really wouldn't have a duty under the old agreement because the prices are high. But at the tail end of the old softwood lumber agreement, the Canadian and US dollar were close to par, and they've swung about 30%. And so the Canadians have enjoyed the change in currency, selling into US dollars, getting US dollars back and then exchanging them into Canadian dollars. I would know, my family has a mill in British Columbia, and log prices have come up with that, so it's not like they've had these just incredible margins, but they've probably been doing quite well. I haven't been watching their financials. But the US government felt like it was time to impose a duty because we hadn't had an agreement, and maybe there's other factors. I've heard people say that it has to do with dairy and different things like that. But really, I think because we're overblowing the cost of lumber that's going into a home, we're blowing this issue out of proportion. And what I think is going on is we're assuming that since houses are made from wood, then that must be the majority of the cost. The fact is that wood hovers around 2.5% of the cost of building a home. And in fact, some people are saying this is going to raise the price of a home construction by $3,600. And I've heard somebody else say that it could be raise the price of a home by 4%. And it's going to send a lot of people home from building and home from work because now we're not going to be able to build homes or afford them. I mean, we've had a 20% increase in the lumber price since Donald Trump was elected in November of 2016. That increase actually translates to about $1,275 US dollars per household increase in the cost of lumber in a home. I think the total cost of lumber into a home is about $6,500 total right now. So we've seen, that 20% increase, $1,275 is a real number. But when you're talking about, the U.S. Census estimates say that the value of homes in the United States average $350,000. The NAHB says I think it's $235,000, not counting the land cost. Your price of lumber in that home is $6,500. It's a small amount. I mean, we're talking about pieces of furniture that can cost more than that, or sets of furniture anyway. So to say that somebody's not going to build a home because of a $1,200 increase, I think is ludicrous. The other fact that people are refusing to take a look at is lumber is an unregulated commodity. What does that mean? That means each and every day the price of lumber is dependent upon what the buyer is willing to pay and what the seller is willing to sell it for. Therefore, if you have a carload of lumber and you're a lumber salesman and you're trying to sell it, duty comes out one day at 20%, and then you go out to the market and say, okay, I want 20% more for my product. I'm selling it for $400. Now today I want $480 a thousand for my lumber. The buyers are going to go, okay, let me call the next guy. There's going to be another seller that's going to realize that nobody's selling at $480. Maybe the price is going up. Maybe they can get $410 or even $420. Maybe they really need the wood and nobody else is selling it. But on the contrary, if for some reason building were to slow, as the NAHB says, the price will go down almost immediately because people won't be buying wood. Therefore, there'll be a lot on the market to sell. So this idea that this duty is going to stifle this market, I just don't get it. I think a lot of it's fear-based. I think a lot of it is people with an agenda. And before anybody attacks me and says, oh, you just favor the duty and you want to destroy the Canadian market and the U.S. housing market can't handle not having Canadian wood, the Canadian wood's going to come here. And fortunately, we have a really good lumber market right now. I think it's going to keep increasing for a while because I think housing's improving. So I think we've got a supply-demand issue. I think Canadians are going to continue to ship into the United States. I'd like to see the Canadians have a really nice margin, and I'd like to see the Americans have a really nice margin. Where it falls down is where we have a situation where the Canadians have a nice margin and the Americans do not, or vice versa. It should be, within reason, a market where good producers can make a margin based on the products they produce. And I think that should be the goal here. I think if you look at it, lumber is really well priced out of the overall cost of a home. And I think that it would do people well to take a step back, do a little research before commenting on all. I think we're all fortunate that the prices are where they are. And I think we can have a nice lumber market. We can supply the American builders with product. And we can continue to build homes at a rate that fits the marketplace. Many places have a housing crisis. They need to build structures, both homes and multifamily residences. So with that, I'd just like to close by saying, let's be patient. Let's do some research. But I think, in this world and day and age where everything's about headlines, the headlines that go with this story just haven't been accurate. Thanks for watching.